Hey guys, hello and welcome to the latest Project Spark developer stream. I'm Mike Lesko, the community manager for Team Dakota, here with a couple of ruffians that we pulled in off the streets. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves because I always botch this stuff.
Mr. Art Director.
I'm Brad Schubert, Art Director on Spark.
I'm Judge Chevrier, Lead Concept Artist on Project Spark.
That's not how I would have pronounced your last name.
That's why you didn't do it.
I would have said Jed Chevrolet.
At hockey camp once, the coach guy called me Cheeserier the whole time.
Cheeserier, that is awesome. I love that. That's awesome.
CH.
So guys, we want to talk about, we got this little thing coming out in 4 or 5 days. How many days? Zach, you're supposed to know these things. 4? You can't talk. You can mute.
5 days, Mike.
Dude, no one wants to hear you talk. So 5 days on October 7th.
Is it the secondary?
The Project Spark will be, see, isn't that cool? It's modern technology.
Mm-hmm.
The Project Spark Starter Pack will be on store shelves and at a retailer near you. And you'll be able to get all this great goodness that we've been talking about forever. And team's getting ready, and I don't know, we're a little punch drunk. Or maybe it's just me. It's probably just me. These guys look well rested. I don't know what they've been doing.
We drink most of the time.
Yeah. But like, we want to talk about sci-fi, right? This is a new theme, and these guys, usually they won't even give me the time of day because those art guys. And once in a while they hand down a piece of art, and it's so good that everything gets erased, and I don't know what to say, and I take back half the bad things I said about Schubert. Which is a lot.
It is a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Is this where you vent your frustration?
Yeah, it is. You didn't know that. You should tune in more.
Publicly.
You should hear what I say about you all the
A
time.
soapbox.
Yeah.
So that's why I sit this way.
Yeah.
I can't sit.
But I'll let these guys jump in and do that. No other update. We're just kind of driving right through. Be ready on the 7th for everything. And this is some cool stuff. And these guys, no one demos this stuff better than these guys from the get-go. They really had a strong vision for this. So we're really excited to have them tell you about this. No pressure.
No problem. Sci-Fi. We're so excited to be getting into sci-fi stuff. We're all super big sci-fi fans. We've wanted to take Spark beyond the fantasy setting for a while. And it's not only a taste of, what's to come with Spark, but it's a great example of, that Spark isn't going to just be what it is today. And we're really happy to show that our style can both kind of mature, evolve, it can adapt, it can be very flexible in the places that we take it. And so the stuff that we're going to show you today is a great example of us like taking a lot of those thoughts and pillars and theories that we have about our art and apply it to new things, but also bringing in a new way of constructing, where we want to start introducing a more modular system of building pieces for structures, especially interiors. We're going to focus a lot on interiors for sci-fi, so the things that you'd expect, like sliding doors with lights and computer terminals that power on and off, and really mechanical ways of like opening crates and doors and all those things that is far away from fantasy, but with enough style and kind of markers to remind you that you are in the Spark world. So this is the alien asteroid biome, and this was built off of a piece that Jed did. They were doing some really great exercises of speed paints one day, just to say, hey, if you're gonna do sci-fi, just pump out a ton of paintings. And I think that we have a team of 4 concept artists, including Jed. And they pumped out like 15 or so in a day, and Jed hit one that was really strong right off the bat. The whole team had a bunch of them, which have been now kind of slowly incorporated in different ways. But it was a really strong vision. And so as you can see, not only that you get this new biome, but you get some new star fields. You get this cool nebula star field. And then just a normal star field. I know we have night, but this is like more stars and less other stuff. Some of the feedback about like our night sky, it has so much stuff in there, it was hard to make some of the levels where people just wanted to make kind of simple space type things. So we tried to add a few new skies in there to help really make some very stylistic skies, but also some more flexible sky systems too. So.
Yeah, and I think with the Nebula Sky, one of the things we really wanted to push forward was trying to get something really moody in. We've got a lot of really cool, the night sky is really saturated and blue and beautiful, but they're all very clear. With this one, we wanted to get something that was a little bit more atmospheric and moody and kind of creepy.
Oh, I just missed
Is the squirrel? Is that what you're looking
I'm
for?
looking for the squirrel. I play nothing. The
The
squirrel.
new sci-fi squirrel?
The new sci-fi squirrel. So we have a couple characters that we're introducing. We're introducing the Kodian race. This is a new rig. It's a different rig than the others. So you're gonna have some much taller, thinner characters, so that you can get some more variety to balance against the brute and the athletic male. We have, if I can randomize my way to him, the Astrotech male. Let's just put this guy down. Yay! Let's just do
So spooky.
third-person shooter.
It is. It's only creepy.
Congratulations!
Oh,
Alright.
yes,
And yes, for some reason he's
got a
carrying a
crossbow.
crossbow. The magic spark it all. But this is just the example, and everybody who's familiar with Spark will know that randomly generated world through your choices. We really try hard to make that experience kind of really good out of the box to give you a good starting place and inspire you to do neat things. But we've added a lot of new terrain materials, the standard biome terrain materials, path, peak, shore, and plains. A lot of assemblies, a lot of props. These things are kind of alien structures. I don't know if we call them plants or not.
They're they were originally kind of conceived when I was doing the kind of rough environments for this. I kind of wanted to imagine almost like a DNA strand that was kind of floating into the air. And then I was trying to find a way to make them feel more organic. So in my head, it could be anything because it's Spark, but in my head they're the kind of, it's on this moon that kind of extrudes gas from, it's like an exoplanet that extrudes gas from the center of it. And it's covered in this, orange fungus. And maybe the gas kind of travels through that and grows into these, floating gas bags.
Gas bags. What a great name.
It is. We have.
That's what we call you.
We have it.
I know, right?
Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. That had to be said.
Part of me is now in Spark. I am so excited.
It is. Yeah, I'm trying to find the smiley face.
I think
We took it out.
It's still there somewhere.
if you're, but you know what? If you're gonna make a
It's like
character,
I told them we took it out.
if you're gonna make a character and put him on a world filled with gas bags, what weapon would you want him to have? The crossbow.
With a crossbow, obviously. Yeah.
How would that work in space?
Well, you wouldn't be able to hear it, so
Nobody knows.
nobody knows.
Nobody knows to
We'll
look.
save money on sound now.
Yes. See?
Um,
Oh yeah, there are no sounds when you choose the button. No. Just kidding.
Yeah, when we were originally working on these gas bags, Candace was actually sculpting it, and she had sculpted this gas bag, and she was sculpting in ZBrush, and she had symmetry on, and she did this beautiful sculpt, and then when we rotated it 90 degrees, it was a perfect smiley face with these curly cute eyes.
That is awesome.
It was beautiful.
It was the best.
And of
smiley
course,
face
Brad's the one who
accent
discovered it.
ever. I did, of course. Doing an art review, and I can't, it's. And the best thing is those little orange nodules, whatever you want to call it, was the nose, and then the swirly parts with the eyes, and there's this perfect curly Q smile. It was.
See, and it's random stuff like that that people will say, no, there's no way that was not intentional. It's like,
No, anybody who spends time making a lot of 3D art, and you have to mirror things, so the texture seams and stuff, the places where they intersect always create faces, and it's just this technical kind of patterny thing. And this was just that times 100.
People,
awesome.
subconsciously we try and pick faces out
Right.
as humans
it
or
was
recognizable
beautiful.
things. Yeah, some of the really fun challenges we had when we were creating anything sci-fi now that we're kind of building more and more sci-fi stuff is trying to take those very strong stylistic pillars and apply them to something that is more uniform. In our fantasy world, a lot of things are very bent and wonky and
Yep.
asymmetrical and stuff like that. So the challenge here was trying to find a way to take those kinds of principles and, am I being quiet?
Yeah, they can't hear you. You're too soft and timid.
and apply those to sci-fi stuff, right? So how do you make something, how do you pull those really fun shapes out of something that has to be a modular snap-to set like this? Where normally in fantasy, would you just bend it and make it this crazy silhouette, right?
Right.
Where we have a lot of very specific design limitations. So how do we find those fun shapes in here?
Yep. So like in fantasy, a good example would be like in fantasy, this would have been one piece. You'd have one house, and that's what we would provide you with. But a lot of feedback we were getting is like people want to get more granular and more flexible with the pieces that they want. So if you come in here now, and this is assembly provided, if you unglue them, you can start to see how we break these into floor, walls, and ceilings. And these are just the really basic building blocks. And then when you get into the prop gallery, you can see that we actually start providing little small, completely rectangular and flat pieces. And then some pieces like pillars and things like that will allow you to build really complex structures, be very creative with how you use them. Floor pieces that all modularly snap together and work together really well. And so we were really trying to find that balance of what we're trying to remain true to Spark, where it's easy to use these things and they're flexible, but it gives the players even more flexibility in how they use these pieces. We're trying to keep it as easy as possible.
Yeah, one of the things I love about
big giant pieces, of course,
playing our game is like the macro building. You can really quickly, easily build a world, like a whole village and stuff. And that was one of the challenges. We really didn't want to lose that while making an interior set, So the design team and the environment team did a really good job putting assemblies together of like kind of buildings with out-of-the-box interiors and so on and so forth.
So you think about this from an overall art direction. Like, what is the, and it's a leading question, but what are the inspirations from,
there's so much, there's so much, and there's so many pieces of so many, there's this group there called Creature Box. I think a lot of people will kind of know them, and they're kind of, for me, they're kind of this great blend of fun but still mature aesthetics. There's, the classic Mass Effect, aesthetics. And then there's the some of the crazier stuff that's out there too that we're kind of a little bit of some of those things and a lot of our own when we add the crafted, sculpted chunkiness. But we look at a lot of different references.
Yeah, I mean with the big bold graphic shapes, the classic Sid Mead stuff, right? He's designed everything.
Right.
And when we were trying to find a way to make our world feel, it needs to feel mature, but it also has to be fun. So we have to have this kind of like amount of color and so on and so forth in it. And there was a couple of Sid Mead paintings. I think he actually did for automotive magazines that like jumped out at me, where there's these huge streaks of color in almost like this dystopian future. And he did it through like paneling breakups and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's awesome. So everything we designed has this really kind of, like in Spark, you can tint everything, right? So that's kind of our way to allow people to interject that color and that fun into something that might be, very, very just kind of desaturated. And you can take this architecture set and make some very creepy kind of mature alien-esque stuff out of it, but you can also get some really fun colors too.
What I like when I look at it, right, I can see, even though I'm terrible at creating anything, as people know, but when I look at it, I can see like Blade Runner, right? I can see like kind of that grittiness here with those things. I see you can make that. You could get that there. I see like sort of, Fifth Element stuff, right? You could see that type of feeling there. And you can also see like Futurama, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of have the humor and some of the whimsical nature there. And what strikes me is just like the ability, maybe this speaks also to the engine, so I don't want to give you guys all the credit. But, like it seems like you can do a lot. You can go in a lot of directions. And I don't feel like you guys have bottled us into any one sort of thing. Like there is a lot of like versatility here with what you guys came up with.
That's the trick when you design anything for Spark. Spark's an incredibly difficult game to design for because you have to really respect this kind of stuff people want to do while making sure it's ours, right? When you're gonna say we're gonna make like a sci-fi stuff, those are all the things that come to mind, like Mass Effect, Aliens, Dune, sci-fi books. These are the things that people that inspire other people. So we need to make sure that we're letting ourselves be inspired by those kinds of things as well. So we can deliver on those as well as our own particular vision.
Yeah, Spark is and will always be kind of an entity unto itself. But we have the pleasure of trying to also inspire and allow people to kind of reach their own visions. And it's this really weird balance of trying to find the things that we find important visually, trying to find what other people will be inspired and feel important, and then allow everyone else the flexibility to do those things that we can't think of.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but this news just in. Swarmhammer, one of our core community folks who've been around with a while, reports in chat that he just tested Spark in Windows 10 technical preview and it works. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
Woo, well, great, good news. Hey, thanks for spreading the word. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, hey, we are really ahead of our time here in many ways. We're not even out on the technically released yet, but we're already on future platforms.
That is just amazing, and that's the power of Sci-Fi and Project Spark.
You just can't stop.
Yeah, we actually made Sci-Fi in the future.
Yes, we actually used it as a
yep.
time machine.
Yep.
We have it locked up, but we have it.
We discovered all the things that the community would think is super important, and then we came back and did them.
Right.
Which I'm sure I'll be disproved in like 4 seconds.
You sure your art just isn't that good? Like it's so good that when we put the models in, it just fixes bugs other places.
That is what we're working for, a fully automated system of
I think it's like we make
discovery.
something and we're like, we made this thing, and then everyone's like, it broke everything!
Yeah.
Usually the other way.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Yeah, Brad, I don't know if you know, but whenever like a lot of this somehow, Jed's work usually ends up at our trade shows or our event.
There we go.
Up there. Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah, I picked up the giant blaster.
And, occasionally he'll come by with a friend of his and kind of point it out, and I'll walk over and say, yeah, this is a great work done by our art director, Brad Schuber. Isn't this awesome? Oh, yeah, and this guy, Jed, may have done some little touch-up here and stuff. So I'm always backing you up on that.
My girlfriend came to the studio one time. I swear to God, Mike was the only person in the studio. Just following us around, like, oh, yeah. He doesn't do anything here, really.
I know.
Yeah.
And try to make everybody seem like I'm busy. That's the secret.
Yeah.
That's what we're all trying to do.
I like your cannon arm.
It's a giant blaster.
See, that's pretty awesome. Like, you could have a game with a guy with a big gun, and like half the time he's using it to maneuver around because it's so big that he can hit the ground and jump.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, right there, just another great game idea.
You're just full of good ideas, aren't you?
I am. Just ask me, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Spark needs to read our minds, overconnect, and just pop the game out of our dreams. Guys, where do we stand on that? I know that's on the roadmap. But what do you think?
Me and my Connect stopped speaking to each other.
It did, yeah.
They had a little, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah. He stopped being able to be recognized, and ever since then,
To just ignore each other, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's terribly terrible.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things that I love to do with all the sci-fi content is kind of, since we made Spark, people love to make third-person adventure games. That's probably the thing we see the most of, is like the third-person adventure game, and it's great. That's actually my favorite kind of game. But with this, one of the things, like with the interiors and stuff, what I like to do is kind of go in and actually like build a complex with like a first-person gun,
right?
And go in there and it's fun to be able to make stuff like this, right? So we've got like a heads-up display, and to be able to refine and start to iterate on this kind of thing is going to be great.
And the fun part about this is just like the kind of building structures that you see here and the tiny little pieces. This HUD is also built out of smaller chunks than we provided in the past. So each one of those corner elements and everything that you see can be used, flipped, rotated to make your own UI with. So we're trying to also add a lot more flexibility and modularity to the UI presentation that you can put in your games.
Yeah, one of the first questions people asked when they saw this was like, hey, can we take this apart? And we're like, yep. It's all these different parts and everything, so...
What were like kind of the main issues you tried to hit when you were making a UI? Because it seems like such a huge system, right? And like, so what were your thoughts when putting this together?
Well, when we were making this particular one, we were making a bunch of pieces, and one of our artists, Evan, was kind of riffing on a bunch of like display panels and kind of all the UI for all the human kind of points of interaction for computers and terminals and display screens and so on and so forth. So we had to develop a graphic design language for that. So, you know, we kind of took the basic shape principles based on the architecture and the suits. You know, humans have this kind of, you know, they're very square-based, rectangles, kind of 45-degree angles,
Right.
those kinds of basic principles, and apply them to a UI as well. It's a little bit more
Somebody
decorative
asked for
than
a
everything
sneak
else.
peek into the code, so I'm giving a sneak peek into the code.
Which you understand.
There's a
completely,
bad
right?
joke there somewhere.
That's why I'm just slowly scrolling through them, because I'm like, I hope this is what you wanted to see.
I thought you were pretending like you were writing this, like really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
good.
great design. But well, at least here you can see like display HUD panel A, display HUD panel B, and then, you know, people who know how to put that stuff on the screen will understand how to rotate and put those things.
And
in
those
place.
that don't will watch a MESCAD video coming out
Yes.
in 4 days that'll explain it all, right,
Coming
MESCAD?
out. Yep.
So
in no
for
time.
The HUD, you kind of worked back from what you had already done in like concept art and all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, there were a lot of shape languages and line thicknesses and things like that we had put on. Let me see if we can find the pieces. Not only the here we go.
Yes.
The building pieces itself, but like our little computer terminals here that you can turn on and off.
Right.
And so that we just established the language of line art, if you will, in graphics and in sci-fi, and then applied those to the UI. And we had to then, you know, we just made them super modular so that there can be usable with many ways, many angles, and that you don't have to worry about always butting them up against the screen. And then design came through and added a bunch of layer of functionality and a new like text boxes also have new like a sci-fi treatment to them, and the health meters have a frame around that sci-fi and stuff. So again, it not only allows player to have a little bit more freedom there, but hopefully it shows that we're not stopping at those parts of our art as well, that all parts of our art are going to get changed and updated as we go along.
Yeah, and one of the things I really love about all the sci-fi props is that designing for sci-fi is inherently different than designing for fantasy on kind of a fundamental level, because, you know, as when you think about science fiction, right, it's I mean, we're tool users, so in space you're not going to really have like a sword that doesn't do something, right? So a lot of things have these really cool power on states, or, you know, like a lot of props have cool animations and so on and so forth. So it's really gives you a lot of kind of leeway into taking these things and powering them on and powering them off, and it's almost like two props in one for some of them. I'm not even sure what's in this pack, but I don't want to say something that hasn't come out yet.
Oh, no.
Wait,
no.
there's more packs than
Guys,
this?
we're cool, right?
Wait, no,
Everybody-
yeah, there's
no, Jed, everybody's here.
this
cool.
is it.
These
There's
guys
no-
aren't going to say
there's
anything.
no,
It's cool.
yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
Yeah, no. I think the one you're thinking of did not make it.
Did not.
No.
Okay.
Which one's that, Zach? What? I don't know what you're talking about.
So, but even with, you know, the computer terminals and stuff, when you run up to them, you can interact with them. They'll turn on, they'll turn off, stuff like that. Which is like kind of in the Spark repertoire of stuff.
Mhm.
Those points of interaction are actually really important when people are making games, and we hadn't had a lot of that. That's a cool effect.
Yeah, it's something I never thought about before. So in space, obviously, everything has to serve a purpose, because you don't want something in the space for no reason.
Right. Well, just, you know, like the tools, like like as tool users, you know,
Yeah.
it's inherently different. It's, you don't have something, you know, in sci-fi you wouldn't have just a wrench that's, you know, just a bracket of metal. The wrench would be collapsible and transform or have light on it, you know, stuff like that.
So what does this say about the overall sort of Project Spark story? Big thing that when we first came out, a lot of people are talking about, hey, theme, fantasy, when are you going to have a different version, blah, blah, blah. And finally we came out with science fiction. How do you guys see, like, what does this say about kind of the, you know, the possible futures of Project Spark? I say futures as, you know, different multiverses. We
Yeah.
might go this way or that
Yeah.
way.
Well, you know, I think that our primary goal was, with sci-fi, was to first establish something that was very outside of fantasy. kind of leading themes, the two things that we think that the community really wants to have, and they contrast each other so we can both push technically what we can do and push artistically what we can do. And then really what we move towards in the future is a combination of a lot of things. It's what the community is asking for, what we think will get aligned with new features or technologies that we want. And so we feel that the art direction and the technology is really flexible. We can go a lot of different directions, and so there's 10 or 15 directions and genres and themes that we talk about all the time. And I think we'll get a lot of information about what the community uses, what they really want, and what they don't, frankly, that will help guide us to those next big decisions.
And so how much work was involved in going from where we were with what we call Realm, which is the fantasy look, to what we have here, which, in a lot of ways you could say this is a completely different game. If you didn't know that this is Spark, you'd be like, wow, this is something else.
There's a lot of work in that. The beauty is that we had really strong foundational visual pillars to build upon, which in a lot of games you don't. You start, hey, we just finished Lord of the Rings, and now we're going to build Mass Effect. Right. You throw everything out and you start all over again. What was nice about Spark is that we have those really strong pillars that we could just build upon and grow from. And so we didn't have to reinvent certain wheels, but all our wheels had to change. Right. Like the curl that's in that you see all over the place in fantasy. Well, this is a bad example because you can see them all over the place here. In the actual mechanical parts of sci-fi, the buildings of sci-fi, they're completely done in a different way because it was appropriate for sci-fi to change that. The amount of carved and chiseled and damaged stuff has changed because it's not as appropriate for this part of our sci-fi.
All right. No, that's great. I know you need to go, but I want to ask you this question, and,
yes.
and it's a leading question, so answer it carefully, but it's legit.
Yep.
Once, I'm not trying to be snarky here, but from like an art director perspective, right? And obviously we have a lot of things in the roadmap and a lot of possibilities, and we don't know what's coming. But if you kind of erase all that and you look at what we have now, what types of themes in general interest you, like as an art director for this type of thing? Like, what are the stuff that, if everything else lined up, and obviously there's a lot of things, what are the things that just come to mind, like as being kind of interesting possibilities?
That is a leading question. For me, and not to be coy, there's interesting things all over because taking the art direction that we have built and love and have grown from pretty much a tree. That's where our art direction we spent, like 2 months almost on one tree to figure out what a carved line was, what would negative space look like, what was our texture detail, what were all the parts that were left behind gritty, what parts needed to be clean. And we really got down deep into it. And growing that in any direction, modern's really cool because, there's so much you can do with modern. But yet, like Ninja Japan, pirates, all that stuff is awesome too because there is so much good mythology already out there that people can expand and build from in our worlds.
Right.
And the things I hated at first, to be honest, I really hated the primitives. Like, they ate at my artistic soul. Yes, because they were just blank shapes. But what I saw everybody do with them has completely changed my mind.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so that primitive pack that we're working on, I'm so excited to see what people use those things for because the value has come out in them from what the community makes with it. The thing, so it's such an exciting project to be a part of, and I've got to roll.
Yeah, we got people outside with pitchforks and torches.
They're gonna drag me out. I got to go to a different studio.
But thanks, Brad.
Thanks.
We'll ask Jed the same questions and see if we can get better answers than you gave. So, but thanks for
he
coming
usually
on.
does get better answers. So.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
You gonna come over and sit?
Yeah, I'll jump in the hot seat.
Bring it in.
You gonna start
No.
building some stuff so I can give Jed the hardball questions?
Yeah, I think that as far as theme goes, sci-fi was the first non-fantasy thing we did, right? And there was a lot of ground that we proved there that says, hey, look, this thing can also be manifested in a completely different way,
Right.
which is cool. And we not only need to prove that to like the community and our bosses, but we need to be able to prove that to ourselves. And so this was a big success because fantasy and sci-fi couldn't be more different. Almost any other theme I can think of that's not incredibly abstract is somewhere in the middle.
Right, wouldn't be as diverse when you look at them side by side. Like, wow.
I mean, I can guarantee that everything will be as diverse. It's just more quantified now. Now that we've really kind of understood these are the challenges that we're going to face, and these are the kinds of things that we're going to have to solve. We're still going to have to solve them, but we know we can do it in new ways now, which is cool. And it's that's a really difficult thing to do artistically.
So when kind of asking you the same question, and I honestly don't know, like, as far as themes and stuff, like anything that isn't more than 3 weeks planned out, I can't even think about it because
I can't even think about.
But like
this
what
stuff
is
is
this
so
stuff?
old.
Like, yeah, I know, right? But what, like, where we are right now, right? If you looked at this as Jed, the artist, the gamer, if you looked at it, like, what areas do you want to go? Like, what do you see would be cool to explore?
To be honest, like, I really, really want to develop sci-fi more. Like, I would love to be able to dive really deep into this universe, and I hope people respond in a good way so we have the opportunity to do that.
Right, because ultimately we got to put out the stuff that people want, right?
Well, I mean, there's always the balance of stuff we know is great and stuff that people want. Right. And so we are listening to that, but like to be able to kind of delve deeper, and like we have lore, we have this kind of this universe that we have and are developing, and I would love to be able to dive deeper into that.
Right.
I think that would probably be, as far as themes go, I think Brad just kind of like took an assault rifle and said all of them. I think they all sound cool. Like,
right.
I think you can kind of loop in like pirates into fantasy though. So I think
I think
there's
the
a bit
pirates,
of overlap there.
I think the ninja thing. I mean, I think with the kind of Asian theme could be really interesting.
Sure. But again, like our sci-fi universe, these aren't necessarily parallel universes. They exist in the same mythos, right?
Right.
So there's contact. First Contact is about first contact of humans and Kodians, but the fantasy universe exists in parallel to the sci-fi universe. Right. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like such a huge theme difference. We can make whatever we want inside of this, right?
Right. It's because there's a good foundation, and really it all fits in the story. Like everything we go to actually fits and exists in the Spark universe in some ways that we haven't fully explained. We start to with Champion's Quest, and that'll go on as we kind of go out with the lore, and there's a lot of little hints there, and some of you guys know stuff like that, but like yes.
But I mean, even like internally, like we have to have that built for us to make quality product, right? So like on the concept art team, like even if it was only there, we would still make up all these stories and so on and so forth. So
one question I know has been burning the community is with that Primitives pack that came out. I know you spent a lot of time on the concept art for that. How much did that take to pull that concept art for the Primitives pack out?
Well, so the Primitives pack, like Brad, I did not want to do a Primitives pack. I was like, this doesn't look like it belongs in our game. It breaks almost every stylistic rule we have, so on and so forth. But you guys were joking like, hey Jed, go make the Primitives marketing image. And I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna make it cool, damn it. Like, so I took a day and sat down and built that environment that was kind of like that very geometric thing. And I was still limited when I had to do that because I had to use every primitive in the pack.
Right.
So I still had to have circles and so on and so forth. But did we just shut down?
No, just move the mouse.
He hasn't learned power management yet, but we got him signed up for a course next week.
Yeah, at Microsoft.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, this is actually pretty fun. So I really enjoyed building that environment. So I can't even imagine how much people will, enjoy building it. Well, and when I finished it, everyone was like, "Is that Spark?" Like everyone was walking by my desk, and I was like, I had that up, and it was literally real time. That was almost like that's pretty much just a screenshot. Like, and so I was sitting there with my character, kind of just standing there, and being able to like rotate around and like look through that. Everyone was like, "Wow, what is this? This looks cool." And yeah.
And I think it's cool because it kind of speaks to like the artist mentality where you guys are like, hey, primitives, you're like, oh, you just get all weird and you're like, oh, I feel uncomfortable. And then like you just had to take it and make something awesome, and I think that's really cool, and it speaks to like a lot of the talent we have in the team, like kind of across the board. But the amount of focus that folks in every department has, and like just the intensity they feel to do this stuff, and that's why it's always great to get you guys on. Although I will totally say lots of bad things to make up for all
we
this.
watch sometimes,
but occasionally, I got to say something good. But it is really cool because these guys definitely feel it and are in there, and I hope you guys kind of pick that up from these streams and stuff like that. That it's we're not just kicking out some games and going, all right, let's go home. It's like everybody's agonizing over everything that we want to do and get out there and how does it look.
This is by far the most passionate team I've ever been a part of, hands down. And it's the kind of place that, as an artist, when like the only times people get frustrated are not like really during crunch, not like any of that. It's when they're not working really hard on something that they love. Right. And so like we're like the kind of people that we hire here and the kind of people that like I work with every day are the kind of people who just want to make awesome stuff all the time.
Right.
And that's cool. It's infectious, And
it's something that you don't always get that chance. And working in the game industry is great. Like we're all lucky to have to be able to work in it, but you don't always get that chance. And especially here where it is a pretty open team where anybody can come up with any idea.
Yeah.
Except Zach. Don't give Zach any ideas. Zach, no ideas on that. No, but like seriously, like people just anybody comes up to an idea with design or whatever, and it's just sort of like, hey, it doesn't matter where it comes from, good ideas. And we try to bring that to the community as well and bring that to you guys where we're like, hey, tell us what ideas you have, and we use a lot of them. And I think, the Primitives Pack, despite the fact that we had to lock Brad and Jed in a closet while we built that because they were, so against it, you've even won them over with that. So it's definitely something that we focus on.
Yeah.
So, what leaks are you going to give us? What do you
I don't know. I'm so clueless as to like where we are in time right now. Like, I live pretty far in the future for like what the stuff we're working on.
And especially the concept, right? Like you're like the Marines. You're the first guys into anything we start trying to explore.
We usually, like when we go to pitch new ideas or new packs or something, we're kind of like we sit down with design and kind of come up with like the design and the art, and then we do all the stuff for the pitch, And so that's kind of.
What would you say, like, maybe not a hard percentage, but I mean, is a lot of stuff that you pitch that then, like, do you do a lot of pitches and then we end up picking like 1 out of 10 directions and going, or is it sort of like most of the things you pitch ending up in the game, or is there kind of?
Well, it's different because like what we do all the time when we design a character, we'll do just countless iterations on it. You know what I mean? Like we'll. Like when one of the guys presents a initial like silhouette spread, they usually do 3-4 pages of silhouettes, and then we'll do sketches after that and kind of keep refining it. And that's more art. We do a lot more art than we make.
Right.
But that's like it on any team, right?
Yeah.
So. It's hard to say, I mean, we come up with ideas like when we're, brainstorming champions and stuff. We're often involved in that conversation too. So, like Claude and those guys, they do awesome work. But again, it's like, what's the right thing to do? What's the right thing to make? Almost anyone on this team can come up with a really cool idea, a really great pitch, but what's the right thing to do?
Now, one of the things the community has talked about a lot, or one of the ideas they kicked around, and I totally fought against it, and I don't know if I convinced them, but they like some game companies will turn around and they'll do like 3 different takes on a sort of character, like, hey, 3 concept passes, and then they'll put it out to the community and say, okay, pick which one you want. And just inherently I'm like, no, that's not like for art it's something I can say I like this or I like that, but sure. I can't go to the detail as a gamer that you guys do when you're coming up with a tree and all this stuff that allows you to later on do all this great stuff and still keep that theme, right? That's such a specialized function that you guys have the ability to do and see beyond that I can't, and I think most gamers can't. So I was trying to articulate to them without sounding like, well, only the artists know good art. But like, generally it's one of those things that's not, you don't tend to crowdsource out like initial concept art direction because it's such a big thing. Can you like just maybe, I don't know, expound a little bit on that? Well, maybe I'm wrong and they're right.
Wait, so here's a good one. Like, to kind of illustrate this idea, did you do the concept art for the blaster?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, can you tell me
Because Zach hated that one. by the way.
how does this blaster work? Like, we're looking at it here, and if
Mhm.
we could like point at the screen, like what went in, what are the ideas behind it, and how does it function, and why does it function that way?
Sure. So Codite is the main power source
Hmm.
of pretty much everything
Yeah.
in Project Spark. And Codite is crystallized, like the creation well is kind of the center of our universe,
Right.
right? And we have these creation bands and ribbons that stretch throughout the universe and create everything.
Right. Absolutely.
So Codite is crystallized creation energy. So it's kind of residue that has fallen down it's a mineral, right?
I see.
And
Yeah.
and
It's
they-
like
and they
crystallized
farm
creation.
it.
If you
Sure,
will.
sure. So this is an energy blaster based with Codite at its core. And so, and you can see this kind of motif everywhere. The circle,
Yeah.
it's right behind you in the wall over there.
Right. Absolutely.
And what that is it's essentially a small power cell.
right here and
Yep.
over there. This
Yep.
guy over there. Yeah.
And so that's a power cell that kind of, you think of it like a clip. Like in my original vision of this, if we could make it as animated as I wanted to, you would pop it out, plug it in, and the whole thing would,
right.
this was kind of supposed to like cock back a little.
Like this guy moves
Yep.
back like this.
Yep.
That's why you have this negative space here. Yeah.
Yep. And so essentially, after I kind of designed it and I had this really fun shape that I really liked, it was, how do you make this work?
Yeah.
And so basically, this fires, rotates, and boom.
Oh, okay. So like this rolls while this recoils and then shoots again.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've again, one of the fun things about Spark, like I've worked on other things, like when I worked at Hasbro and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more important when you're working on something that's realistic to make it work, make it real. Like that's your primary concern. On Spark, we push that a lot.
Right.
What's one of the most important things is the shape and the fun nature of the art direction,
Right.
not inherently making sure that it functions like a modern day weapon.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Cool. And so like this kind of stuff really is something that what you're talking about now kind of goes into all of every single item we see, right? Like that
Yeah.
is your job, is to make sure that every item has at least along a pitch is what you just gave me.
yes, absolutely. Everything in our game is thought out and iterated on to a pretty significant extent.
Right.
One of the first things when I first joined this project, my first day, I was painting grass blades. And I didn't even know what the game was, really. And I came out, I was like, grass blades? Does this really matter? Yeah, it does. Because everything in our game can be, about as big as a house. You
Yeah.
can have, you can take that blaster.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the architecture pieces was based on that blaster. They tore it up, the model, and created a giant architecture piece out of it because someone made it huge, like the size of a wall. And they were like, wow, that's cool. So let's kind of like tear this thing apart.
Yeah.
Like any sword can be this. It can be the leg for a mech.
Yeah.
So on and so forth.
Right, absolutely. So it's very hard. So every single angle, and this is always what they say about concept art, but like forget what everyone else has to do. On this team, it's like practice, right? It's like every single piece has to stand on its own.
Sure,
Because
yeah.
we could easily use this guy, right? If we just, excuse me, there we go. We grab this, duplicate it,
Yeah.
rotate it, then now we have like a great little, I don't know, ship piece, right?
Sure.
This could be ship wings. It could be anything we want them to
I've
be.
seen that piece turned into a crashed spaceship. Like someone took it and mirrored it, and so you had these little wings, and they turned it into this like kind of fighter-looking thing.
Right.
They didn't
Oh.
mirror it; they just flipped it that way,
Yeah.
and then so you get those two wings sticking out. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I've seen it turned into a fighter so many times. Yeah, every little thing that we design in this game, every little prop is thought out and iterated on.
Right.
There are some that are hero props that we spend more time on, certainly. But yeah, it's not the kind of project where you can say, hey, make an air conditioning unit, and somebody Googles air conditioning unit, and then you can kind of like photo bash it together, and you're like, what an air conditioning unit is.
Right. Absolutely.
It's like, no, if we were to make an air conditioning unit in Spark, we'd have to start from like, what is the purpose of an air conditioning unit, and literally build our way up all the way to the final result.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot. That's a very interesting way to have to come at everything.
But yeah, as back to your original question for kind of like crowdsourcing art. Yeah, I mean, professional concept artists are trained in that way. That's what we do.
And it's not to say we don't take user input, but it's like that's not necessarily the right. Like,
well,
you hear their input all the time, but when you make that concept work,
Sure.
you're taking all that into account, right? That's all the stuff that you're thinking about.
Sure, absolutely. One of like I was saying earlier, when we design stuff for this game, we have to respect what people are going to want to do with it. And when we're making a sci-fi theme, we have to respect that people are going to want to make those Mass Effect-like games.
Right.
They're going to want to make those Halo-like games. They're going to want to make those kinds of things. So we need to be able to provide them with the right tools to do that while maintaining or making sure they're our own. There are things that like we know works. I don't think anyone would ever be like reject the idea outright and say like no, like we're not going to like listen to anyone or like let them vote on anything because we're going to stand behind our work. But yeah, that's an interesting notion though.
Yeah, because it's something that some companies do that, and I just wasn't able to articulate why. Like with something like the concept art, there's such vision there, and it's so deep that me just putting up 3 images and saying which one do you like it's doing a real disservice to all the reasoning why that's there. It's like they would have to be there in art review meetings for you guys to understand why everything's done the way it is.
I think that if when we do stuff, you should be able to understand it, why we made our decisions at face value, or we're not doing our job right. Mm-hmm. However, there are a lot of rules, and not rules, but thoughts and purpose that go into kind of selecting the variants or the concept art that we select to actually build. That goes into account, and there's a lot of people that are involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, and speaking from my personal experience, design by committee often results in kind of this thing that is very spread thin and doesn't really make anybody happy.
Right.
So, if you think about, a really good kind of example of that is, like super big budget movies that aim at everyone and don't hit anyone.
Right.
So.
Absolutely.
So, what, day to day, I don't think people understand, what is what does Jed do day to day? Because I see you hanging around and joking and playing pool, and, I don't actually see you doing work, so.
That's what I do.
Yeah, that is it.
I'm the in-house professional pool
He's
tutor.
He's a hustler. Don't play him in pool for money, man. No matter how bad he seems, don't do it.
So I come to work and just start drawing, start painting. I've got a list of content that we're working on all the time, and I've got a team of 3 other guys, and we sync up in the morning, and we're like, all right, let's talk about art for an hour. So we talk about art, we talk about all the paintings we're working on, then we talk about what we're going to do for the day, and whether it be let's design. A lot of you guys have probably noticed our packs are broken up into blacksmith stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Legendary Blacksmith is a good example of that's kind of this little vignetted environment story with a character in it, and usually one person will kind of take something like that so they can own it, and they'll do kind of visual development art for it, and they'll what's this blacksmith look and feel like, and they'll kind of tool on that, and what kind of what's he making these weapons in, and what's he making them out of, and do a little kind of that narrative character building as well as work on the art.
So you guys are really almost building the whole story.
Well, I mean, we have Henry helps works a lot in the story and so on and so forth, but it's a big part of our job.
You have
a
to,
lot
you
of
have
our
to go
narrative.
through it.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of our narrative in our game right now has come off through the art. There is a thread of the narrative of Project Spark in the art.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. So it's a really, really big part of our job, and we take that part really seriously. We goof off a lot, but we want to make sure that our story is being told through the art.
Right.
And so, like you said, you'd like to work on sci-fi. Now, you're not the art director, so you can actually say what you want to work on and no one can hold you to it. What part of sci-fi are you like, man, I would really love it if...
the Kodian, right? We made a Kodian.
Yeah.
And he's kind of just this standalone kind of guy. I would love to dive deeper into the Kodian civilization and the mythology behind them is really cool. Mm-hmm. And I would love to be able to explain that and share that with the community a little bit more. in proper circumstance. That would be cool. Like, this guy is a great character.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to kind of like expand on him a bit more.
For sure.
There are tons of things like I would love to do. I think robots would be really cool, just in general. I don't know how they manifest in our world, but I think that would be a really fun thing to work on.
Yeah,
but I mean, I'm just robots are like, if I could do any, like when I go home, I just draw robots all day. So.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like with sci-fi, everybody has different interests, So you like the more? I mean, is it more like the Transformers type of robots, or is it more the day the Earth stood still type robot? Or what do you?
I think that like with the nature of Project Spark, like robots that you could kind of build yourself would be awesome. Again, we're not making that.
Robot Arena just announced the Robot Arena
shut
DLC. I just announced it.
That would be really cool. That would be something I would love to go work on.
I mean, that would be fun, right? Like, 'cause think about it. If you could do that, and you do something that looked really cool, but if each like component had certain like built-in mechanics, and then people had to build them, and then as an assembly drop it in the world, and then you just ran battles.
It'd be totally awesome.
Like that would be
awesome.
so. I would totally get into that.
Because I mean,
I'd be
everything
like,
comes with a brain on it already, right? So, but like with all the sci-fi stuff, like people have been just building robots nonstop. Like once we made a square piece of like greebly looking sci-fi stuff, it was like robot. So, yeah. But I think that would be fun. That would be my probably my go-to thing for sci-fi is like robots and more Kodian stuff.
Right. Absolutely. And how do you kind of envision Kodian architecture? Obviously, it hasn't been fleshed out yet.
Oh,
But
probably has.
Well, I mean, when we designed the character, we put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So, when we designed, we didn't just like make a Kodian.
No,
we designed, one of the things I like to do before we start on a race is kind of put together what I like to call a culture doc, which is kind of like, their overall cultural influences, what they like to eat in the morning, what does their architecture look like, what is their basic shape language, why are they the way they are, who are they,
Right.
Where do they live, what's their native biome, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we definitely have all that information on the Kodians. So there's a lot of thought that goes into there. If we ever decide we want to kind of, do more Kodian stuff, and that will, the community will probably determine that, we can't always go down that route.
So answer this: Star Wars or Star Trek?
Can't make me say that here.
Come on.
Well, so okay, here's my philosophy on sci-fi, right? Sci-fi, really good sci-fi is grounded in reality. Star Wars is space fantasy. And I love space fantasy. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I like space fantasy stuff. But it's different. Sci-fi or Star Trek oftentimes is still a bit, the new Star Trek is very space fantasy. But, oftentimes Star Trek, like next gen stuff, a lot of that is grounded in theoretical physics.
Right.
It's practical stuff. So they're very different. Like it's, Dune versus Isaac Asimov. I can't compare them.
Right.
But I'm super excited for the new Star Wars movies. I really hope they don't break my heart again.
I can sailed.
I can only take so much. No, I keep giving them my money, and I will. I'm like I know better, but Star Wars is like a bad ex-girlfriend.
You guys can quote Jet on that.
Keep going back.
No, I mean, and it's like, to me, one of the things, and maybe just being more kind of on the social side of things, the community side, like when I look at Futurama and I look at what they did with that series and where they they had to go and they had to do a job similar to what you guys have, where they're taking all this great like sci-fi canon and how do we sort of put that in and
how do you digest it, make something meaningful but relatable?
Yeah, to everybody from all of that stuff. And I always was admired what they were able to do with that and kind of do different interesting things. And I think in a lot of ways, I look at that here and like how do we do that so that you can appeal to the all the various different Ray Bradbury and Asimov and
it's a different kind of challenge. I mean we definitely have there's lines we don't cross that we've drawn in the sand, but we try and make it as applicable. It's this guy over here telling you to be super unique. And this guy over here telling you to be like, no one will understand that. And you have to
Right.
find the right balance of content for that.
I remember months ago when we first saw, I think you or Brad sent out one of your first like kind of images from Sci-Fi, and it just really struck me as this image, and I saw it and I'm like, man, I could see this as a pulp sci-fi cover with, the moon is a harsh mistress or something afterwards, and then I think it was Jason Major then went and did a type
He
thing
he
and,
photoshopped it.
and made it a book cover, and it was just like that
Yeah.
type of stuff. It's really fun. When
That was a big influence on our sci-fi art direction. Was kind of like very kind of like old school 70s. I mean, we made our first biome we made is the moon, right?
right.
Or a moon, not the moon. So that was actually when we sent that image. I remember you saying that because we were like, success.
It was very cool.
And it's just fun to see the art and then immediately draw that, have that, because that's me. You can ask Zach all day long. All I do is blurt out things that pop into my mind from whatever it is that I see, and
All day long.
yeah, he gets really sick of it.
It doesn't stop.
But like when you get that image and that's your first thought, it's like, wow, this just feels like those pulp 70s covers that would with that awesome artwork that was just so cool, and the goofy font and headlines. It was really great stuff. No way Babylon 5 destroys them all.
Babylon 5 is pretty good though.
It was, and then kind of.
I just started watching is Farscape. I've never.
Really, you never watched?
I've never seen Farscape before.
It got a little weird, I think, a few seasons in, but like the first few seasons were really solid, I thought.
Yeah.
And what about Battlestar? Didn't like it?
It's okay. Yeah. I mean, like I never finished it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I got about halfway through and was just kind of like
Me too.
I just
Really?
didn't get
Wow.
called back to it. I mean, I probably at some point will finish it on principle.
I think
But-
the story did get a little weird towards the end, but I think like the character development really kind of sucked me in, and
Yeah.
the kind of, to me, it was I like sci-fi that's believable, and that's why like Babylon 5 get a little weird. Like, no, the commander of the station shouldn't be out there flying a fighter pilot fighting people. That's just not how things work.
Well, so me and my brother like to he likes to write and I like to do art, so we work on a lot of projects together. And our problem is he's a super smart guy, and the problem that we always run into is like there's no reason people should do anything ever in sci-fi. Humans should never, like, other than just adventure and storytelling, there's no reason to not just send a robot to do it.
right.
And that's the problem you always run into. So you just make robot stories.
Make lots of stories.
You and robots, I'm seeing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
But so there were some questions about armor, female armor, especially for like the Astrotech.
Yeah,
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you can.
I can.
Yes,
Yeah,
you can.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Yeah, apparently he's
Are you
the
guys-
cop that
Are
says
you guys tricking me?
no.
All right. What do you want to know about it?
Well, I don't know. Why do you guys hate female armor? Why do you never put any female armor for? Are there no females in space? Is that what you're saying the future is?
There
Is that
certainly are. There's certainly a female astrotech.
There is a female Astrotech. You can blame Zach for not having it on screen
Yeah.
today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. So we can't talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Female astrotech's out. She's awesome. I think she's probably my favorite character in the game.
Yeah,
Actually,
it came out
her
really well.
her and the female hunter
Mm-hmm.
are my favorite characters, I think. Yeah, she turned out great. She looks.
Astrotech Gate already started. Mescad coined the hashtag. But it's definitely one of those things that we always try to be very careful of. But can you talk a little bit about the concept? Sometimes you end up in a situation where you guys have done certain concept art, and the way I envision it, the way I kind of explain it, and maybe it's full of it because usually I am. But you guys are trying to sell a concept. Like people get that, you get the story, and you're trying to put something out there that resonates with everybody. Like,
Yeah.
they're not artists, all these folks that they can see it. So you're trying to do everything really great. A lot of times that starts out with maybe a male character, and you're like, look at that, and it sells the vision, and people get that. Sometimes female, but whatever it was that you guys start with, and then you kind of work from that, and then you have the folks trying to put all that together, and they're trying to get as close to the concept to make sure that they get everybody else and keep that dictator Schubert happy, because everything's going to be perfect. And so they're working on that, and then you kind of get down the road a bit, and then you sort of have that stuff that you started a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we try to do is make sure that when we start at the concept phase, that we try to create characters and props and objects, everything as diverse as possible.
Yeah.
Because of that, because it's easy to fall into a case like if you had concept was all male characters, and then you get far down the road, everybody's like, hey, yeah, guys, come on, have you noticed you have all male characters? Now it's like, okay, we could put in female characters, but geez, we'd have to go do all this work, and then you end up with all that business stuff, and you're making, maybe not the best decision, but for legit reasons because you're so far down the line.
Sure.
How do you guys look at that and deal with that when you're doing the concept? Do you just try to make sure you're
It's the parody.
trying to make sure you get the parity there? So that
Yeah,
there's-
this again is a very great team about, making sure that like there's as many female characters as there are male characters. And again, I don't know what's out yet, so I got to watch what I say. But there are certainly, whenever we make we're not going to have a male-dominated cast. I don't think we have in the past. I don't think we are going to in the future. A lot of like my favorite characters are females, and when we get into that initial pitch phase, a lot of times before I designed the Astrotech, I had designed I'd done a painting. Like what led to the Astrotech final design was a painting I did. It was like a bust of a female who was just kind of like looking off into space, and that was like Brad was like, "That's cool. Let's roll with something like that." And
that's
so,
cool.
and then the female parody of the Astrotech just kind of followed suit to that armor design.
Right.
So.
And that's something that a lot of people comment on, is that they love the fact that you can look at our characters and they're not unrealistically, their armor isn't huge and busty and weirdness, and that's kind of something that I think overall the team takes a lot of pride in, and it starts with you guys with the art and the look.
Yeah, I mean, when we design a character, we're a very opinionated team about games. Like, again, we're very passionate and we're very aware of kind of like social stigmas and what's going on in video games at the same time. And we have a lot of women on the team who we actually, like, when we first started designing when I sat down to design like the athletic female body type, not even a character, just the body type. We sat down with some women that worked in the office and we're like, hey, like, what do you guys think about this? Like, let's iterate on this and find out like what's the right proper shape for this character. And we did the same thing with the males, so it's like anything we do with a male, we're going to do with a female.
I'm going to tell you that if you ask Zach the proper shape for the male and you ask me the proper shape for the male, you're probably going to get some divergent
well, we made the brute for you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. Look, I got the gas bag and the brute. Our team is such givers. I'm telling you, I'm like racking it up. They're just trying to get out of getting on any more streams in the future. They're like, yeah, that's it. But that's good stuff. So, like, what do you think? What are your thoughts about next week, Tuesday, the big day?
I'm excited. It's in GameStop. Like, I went to GameStop and it was right there, and I was like, hey, I painted that picture, and that was cool.
Is that weird sometimes? Is that like kind of?
I've lost touch with it. Like when I walk in, we've got one of those hanging up in like the front of the studio, and I just kind of, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, I should have done this, and look at all these things.
Wait. So what should have you done?
I did that.
No,
but what
should
should have you done? Yeah, like
tell us what sucks.
Oh, no way.
The top
No
3
way.
things.
No way.
But that's interesting. So you do, when you look at it, you're like, oh damn,
It's it was one of those things that it's box art, it's marketing art, so there's a lot of people involved.
A launch party here in Seattle.
Ooh.
Jed, what's your address? We're gonna go down.
I just moved. I don't even know my address.
We're gonna go to Jed's. That is the lamest excuse.
I moved
ever.
yesterday.
Did you
My
really?
new place, yeah.
Wow, up that mansion on Lake Washington, right?
Yeah, that's
The one that who was that? Did Bomber just move out of that one that you bought? Was that?
Yeah.
Or is he next door?
We're roommates.
Roommates? Oh, nice. All right, good to see. All right, guys. Any other questions for Jed or Zach? No, me. No more. You're out of your quarter of questions for me. We're gonna go down to Duquesne's house for the launch party. That'll be fun.
Are these just lists of things we're supposed to make?
Probably.
Yeah.
They have a lot of work for us.
Yeah. Good. We want work.
Dual wielding. Can you dual wield pistols? Does it work? I don't think we have the. Do we have the animation that would?
No,
You know what?
not-
I expect you
not
guys to
currently.
solve that.
Not currently.
Who do we have as a guest? What for Tuesday? I don't know. Like I gave Zach a lot of work. Unfortunately, that wasn't one of them, which means it hasn't been done. The scheduling the guests for Tuesday. So,
Why
will,
would you tell them the truth? Oh my god.
What? It's all about being genuine, man. See, if I had assigned it to Zach, it would be done. If I keep it for myself, it's not going to get done in like 11:55 on Tuesday.
He's gonna grab somebody.
Yeah.
Hey, get in this room.
Actually, I think no. Maybe I was. I think the plan is to get Sax and Henry on for Tuesday at noon because that's launch. Yeah. So if that's the case, expect those guys. But we will be back Tuesday noon PDT. Of course, all you guys are probably going to be playing the game and not tuning in, but that's all right. We'll stream anyways, and it'll be sad, and we'll probably cry.
It'll be really sad on launch date. We'll all feel really sad.
Yes, we'll all
That's
feel really
the
sad
emotion
that you're
we'll
all
have.
playing the game and not watching the stream, and
Yeah.
the ratings go down, and they're
You
going
guys
to threaten
should
me with
stream.
cancellation. And I know we should make you guys stream on.
I'd love to see what you guys are making
Yeah,
on launch day. I'm really excited. So
it's gonna be pretty cool. It's gonna be pretty exciting. I'm also a little nervous, right? Like, I mean, we get a lot of people flooding into the service. You never know what can happen, and but we got our best guy on it, Zach. So I'm sure he will be holding it down, holding down the fort. And if not, we'll cross the streams and see what happens. But so tune in next Tuesday at noon. Pay attention to social media over the next few days. We'll be continuing to put out some stuff. Hey, if there's a review on a site or something, or if you like the game or whatever, don't be afraid. We're not going to say don't go out and give honest feedback on what you feel about Project Spark. We'd love to have informed reviews that maybe counter some of the less informed reviews that tend to happen when you release something there. Yes, Zach is holding it down while Mike holds it back. That pretty much sums it up. On that
in
note,
context to what?
yeah, could be anything. And with that, we
Something
will
incredibly wholesome, Jed. In
Yes.
context to something incredibly wholesome.
absolutely wholesome.
Family-friendly stream.
Yeah, probably involves charity and bingo night at the church or something like that. But thanks, guys, and we will talk to you next week. And stay tuned because more good stuff coming. And don't forget to pre-order. Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
guys.
See you.